Hey, this is the first step of me talking to my inner child and trying to heal myself and get over a lot of my trauma. I was sheltered as a kid. And when I say sheltered, I was not allowed to have a social life. I was not allowed to have friends. My mama would make me think that friends are the worst thing that could ever exist based off of her experiences that she went through. She projected those insecurities onto me. And now, as an adult, I'm 23 now, I have trouble making friends. I have trouble being in relationships. I'm very codependent in relationships because I was silenced as a kid. And I just feel like my voice was taken away from me. And I would have to go to my parents for validation for everything. And it made it hard for me to trust myself and to trust my own opinions and to trust myself in making decisions for myself. The way I grew up, it's all about finding you a man, having kids, and loving that man regardless. That's what I was taught. I was not taught anything outside of that. And
on June 3rd, 2026, the clock has just crossed 1. A young woman is behind the wheel of her car, easing toward a stop sign at the corner of Ridge Avenue and North 25th Street. There is no traffic light here, no camera mounted at eye level, no officer parked nearby, just a sign, just a pause, just the kind of ordinary intersection that thousands of drivers in this city slow down for every single day without thinking once about it. She does not see what is coming for her. Each year in the United States, more than 19,000 people die by gun homicide. East St. Louis, a city of fewer than 18,000 residents, has appeared on more than one national list as the deadliest small city in America per capita. Yet a statistic flattens things. A statistic turns a person into a digit into a percentage into a number you scroll past on the way to weather. This is not that. When the shots end, the woman behind the wheel is no longer steering. Her foot is no longer guiding the pedals. Her hand is no longer on the gear shift. Something else has taken over now. The same thing that controls anything moving on the surface of the earth when a human being lets go. Momentum. The car keeps going. For seconds that will feel like minutes to the witnesses standing on that corner. The vehicle rolls forward through the intersection as if nothing has changed, as if the alchemist is still there, as if her afternoon is not over. Drivers in the next lane glance over, half expecting to see her eyes meet theirs through the glass. What they see instead is the back of a head no longer answering anyone. The car keeps going. Her name was Kajha. To the strangers who scrolled her tarot videos at 2 in the morning, who pulled cards along with her on live stream, who slid into her direct messages asking what their dreams meant, she was Kajha Thee Alchemist. To her 2 children, she was Mom. To Illinois State Police, by the end of the week, she would become a name printed across a charging document that called What Happened to Her, First-Degree Murder. How does a 24-year-old single mother end up dead at a stop sign in broad daylight on an ordinary Wednesday? And what does a young woman name herself when she sits down one night and decides she is no longer just the person she was born as, but something she has chosen to become? To answer that, you have to go back. Not far. Just to the version of her that existed before the lights and the followers and the small business she ran from her phone. Back to the choice no one filmed. Back to a young woman in St. Louis, sitting somewhere quiet with a notebook, deciding that the legal name printed on her birth certificate did not yet contain everything she planned to be.
Because that shit you poured in the kitchen, I should have fucked you up. but I let you walk away, and I let you come get yourself together. But bitch, I'ma let you know if you ever pull that shit on me again, that will be your last motherfucking day standing.
Kajha Johnson. That was the name the state of Missouri knew, the name she used on the lease, the name on the hospital paperwork when her children were born, a name that belonged to a daughter, a sister, a mother, a young woman in a city where being a young woman is its own slow act of survival.
I'ma go buy me a gun, and I'ma come back here and set this motherfucker off.
She was 24 years old with 2 children. She lived inside a routine that thousands of single mothers in the metro area would recognize on sight. The kind of routine where every hour has a job assigned to it and there are never enough hours in a day for relaxation. But Kajha did not stop at the name the state gave her. Somewhere along the way she began calling herself something else. Kajha, Thee Alchemist. The alchemist, in the oldest sense, was the figure who claimed to turn one thing into another, base metal into gold, sickness into health, confusion into clarity. The alchemist was not magic. The alchemist was a craftsperson who insisted that transformation was possible if you understood the materials. That was the name she chose. It was not a stage name. It was rather a statement. Around that name she built a business. She called it Tapped In Tarot by Kajha. The concept was straightforward. Most of her audience would never sit across a table from a professional reader. Most of her audience could not afford the gate-kept version of spiritual guidance, the kind that came in candlelit studios with appointment slots. So she took the practice to her phone. She lit her own candles. She set up her own camera. Moreover, she offered something most of her viewers had never received from any institution in their lives, which was undivided attention.
Good morning. So I'm going to do a different type of video. As y'all know, I am a reader. So we are going to do 3 things you need to know for the week and then whatever your zodiac sign is. So we're going to start with Aquarius. So 3 things that you need to know this week as an Aquarius. We're going to start with number 1 with the Knight of Wands in reverse, okay? So there is a need to slow down, okay? Slow down with all the overthinking, all the overanalyzing, trying to get a million things done at one time as you always do. All the overthinking, anxiety, everything is just running through your mind at this time because you want so much for yourself. But we understand that, Aquas. We understand. You know, y'all haven't been in the best situations.
She read for people about love, about grief, about what they should walk away from, about whether the person who hurt them was thinking about them too. The cards themselves matter less than the ritual around them, and Kajha understood the ritual. She knew when to slow down, knew when to repeat a phrase, knew that someone watching her video at 3 in the morning, alone, did not need a stranger to be theatrical. They needed a stranger to sound like she had been there. This is the part the headlines will not tell you about her. A tarot reader who builds a following from nothing builds it the way a small business owner builds anything from nothing. Discipline, repetition, posting when she does not feel like posting, showing up on camera the morning after a sleepless night because her audience is waiting, filming take after take when the lighting is wrong, reading the comments, answering the messages, learning the algorithm, running the brand, doing all of this between school pickup, dinner, bath time and bedtime stories, because 2 small children do not pause their childhood and life for anyone's content schedule. You would not call that magic. You would call it work. The alchemy was real. It just was not the kind the word usually conjures. She was taking ordinary materials, a phone, a folding table, a deck of cards, an afternoon she had carved out of an otherwise stretched life, and she was turning them into income, into community, into the beginning of a name that other people had started to recognize, into the early shape of a small empire she had not yet finished building. That is what makes the rest of this story land the way it does. Because the story is not about a woman who lived a small life. The story is about a woman whose life was still expanding when something walked up beside it and stopped it. By the spring of 2026, Kajha was visible, not famous, visible. A regional presence with a recognizable handle, a recognizable look, a recognizable voice, the kind of creator whose name circulates in screenshots, whose readings get reposted, whose appointment slots fill. She was reaching the stage where a side hustle becomes a real business, where a brand becomes a household name inside its niche. The hardest part of building any independent business is the part right before it tips into weight. Stable. She was somewhere near that line. Behind the brand, at home, she was a mother of two. Two children whose ages and faces I will not put on screen here, because they did not consent to be the center of a story they are still too young to understand. Her family lives in the Belleville area, across the river in Illinois. They are the ones who, in the days after her death, opened a public fundraiser to help bury her and to help raise the children she left behind. That contrast is the architecture of her life. Public alchemist, private mother. Two halves of a person who was, at 24, still figuring out how to fit them together inside the same week. Now picture the morning of Wednesday, June 3rd, 2026. You do not know what her morning was, neither do I. What we know is that by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, she was in her car, on the streets of East St. Louis, approaching a stop sign at Ridge Avenue and North 25th Street. East St. Louis is not a long city. The grid is small. The intersections are close together. A car can travel from one side to the other in less time than it takes to play a single song on the radio. Ridge and 25th is residential. Low houses, lawns, sidewalks. The kind of corner where a child might be walking home from somewhere in the afternoon. She stopped at the sign. That is what stop signs are for. That is what she did. What happened next is, the moment another vehicle pulled up to hers, shots were fired. Multiple rounds entered her vehicle and entered her. She was rushed to a nearby hospital. The doctors there did what doctors do in those rooms. With that adrenaline, on that kind of clock, none of it was enough. She was pronounced dead. The car did not stop when she did. The car kept going. Think about that for a moment. There is something almost unbearable in the physics of it. A bullet travels at hundreds of meters per second. A human life ends in less than a heartbeat. Yet the car she had been driving, the machine she had been controlling with the small unconscious adjustments of her hands and feet, did not know any of that. The engine kept its rhythm, the wheels kept their grip. The vehicle, for a few more seconds, continued the journey she was no longer alive to take. That is the image the witnesses will remember, not the sound, the motion. A car that kept moving when the woman inside it could not. Watch what that image does as a metaphor, because it does not stop at the intersection. Her name kept moving. Her brand kept moving. The videos she had filmed in the previous weeks were still scheduled, still queued, still set to publish themselves on platforms that do not know when someone dies. Strangers who had not heard the news were still tapping the heart button under her posts, still leaving comments, still booking readings on a form that did not yet know to close. In the days after a creator's death, there is always this haunting lag. The internet does not grieve in real time. The internet keeps performing the person until somebody changes the settings. Kajha's account kept moving the way her car kept moving, forward, without her. The investigation began almost immediately. The East St. Louis Police Department arrived at the scene, secured the area, and requested help from the Illinois State Police. ISB agents took over the lead investigative role. This is standard for a homicide in East St. Louis, where the local department leans on state resources for complex cases. What it tells you is that within hours, the case had become a serious, full-resource investigation, not a paperwork file. Agents identified a suspect, a 23-year-old woman named Breon D. Bess of Swansea, Illinois, was developed as a suspect over the next 48 hours. By Friday, 2 days after the shooting, she had been taken into custody and charged with first-degree murder. She was being held at the St. Clair County Jail. A charge is not a conviction. The first-degree murder charge against Breon Bess means the state of Illinois has alleged that she is responsible for Kajha's death. That allegation now has to be tested in a courtroom, with evidence, with witnesses, with defense counsel, with a judge or a jury. Until that process plays out, the legal system treats her as accused, not as established. Whatever you have seen circulating online about why this happened, whatever rumors you have read on tabloid blogs about motive, none of it has been tested, none of it has been confirmed that intends to outlive the next news cycle. What we can say with confidence is this: the two women were 24 and 23. They lived in the same metro area. The shooting happened in daylight at a residential intersection. A suspect was identified, arrested, and charged within 48 hours, which is fast, and which usually means investigators had a clear evidentiary trail to follow. Beyond that, the courtroom will tell the story. Now turn back to the family. In the days after Kajha died, her family in the Belleville area did what so many families in this country are now forced to do when violence visits their kitchen table. They opened a public fundraiser, they asked their community, and then the wider internet, for help covering the funeral. They asked for help with the two children who, at the ages they are now, will spend the rest of their lives reconstructing their mother from photographs, videos, voicemails, the comments she left under other people's posts, and the videos she filmed for strangers who never met her in person. That is what her brand becomes now. Not a business, an archive. Every reading she filmed is, in a way, a recorded letter to the children who survived her. They will be able to hear her voice for the rest of their lives. They will be able to watch their mother pull cards on a folding table in a small room with warm light. They will be able to memorize a version of her speaking, breathing, laughing, that most children who lose a parent young do not get to keep. The alchemy of what she built is going to do one more transformation she did not plan. It is going to become the way her children remember her face. Let me take a moment of yours here, before I close. I do not bring stories like this to you so you can feel something for 30 seconds and scroll on. I bring them because somewhere out there, in a hospital room in the Belleville area, in a quiet bedroom that smells like a mother who was supposed to come home and did not, in a kitchen where a grandmother is now learning a bedtime routine she should not have had to learn, there are two children for whom this is not a video. This is the rest of their lives. If this story moved you, even a little, do something with that feeling before it cools. Go and find the fundraiser her family has set up for her funeral and for those two children. Read what they wrote. If you can give, give. If you cannot give, share it. If you cannot share it, leave a comment on her family's page that tells them their daughter mattered to a stranger somewhere who heard her name today for the first time. That comment will be read. That comment will help. Grief, in the early weeks, is unbearably quiet. A stranger's voice in the silence can do more than you know. And if this is the kind of story you want me to keep bringing you, the kind where the person at the center is treated as a person and not a clip, the kind where the family is named with care and the accused is named with caution and the rumors are left at the door, then subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it with one friend who needs to know her name. Every time you do that, you are telling the algorithm that there is an audience for telling the truth, slowly. There is. There has to be. Because the day there is not, the only stories that survive will be the cruel ones, told fast. Now let me close the way these stories should be closed, with the math and the irony and the question. The official number. 1. One young mother. One name on a coroner's report. One charging document. One suspect in custody. The official version of this case fits onto a single page. The real number is harder to count. The real number includes the readings she will not film, the customers she will not serve, the followers who will keep checking her page for months, waiting for a new video that will not come, the two children who lost a mother in the time it takes to roll up to a stop sign, the grandmother who is now a guardian, the aunt who is now a co-parent, the cousins who will grow up knowing her name as a story instead of as a person, the friends who will save her voicemails to drives they back up twice, the strangers who never met her in person but who, in some way they cannot quite explain, loved her. The real number, in cases like this, is always larger than the page. Here is the irony. Because this story has one, and it is the kind of irony that does not let you sleep. Kajha named herself an alchemist. The word means a person who transforms one substance into another. She spent the last years of her life turning her phone into a pulpit, turning a folding table into a small business, turning her time into income, turning her audience into community. She was, in the literal sense, a young woman who knew how to make things become other things. And now, the very thing she was best at, the alchemy of transformation, is being performed on her, without her consent, by everyone she left behind. Her family is transforming a public fundraiser into the cost of a casket. Her children will spend years transforming her recorded voice into a memory of being held. Her followers will transform her old live streams into a kind of grief ritual most of them have never practiced before. The internet itself will transform her brand into an archive. Even her killer, whoever the courts ultimately determine that was, will be transformed by this case into a defendant, into a sentence, into a number in a different system. Everything she touched is becoming something else. That was always her gift. Now, it is everyone else's task. The car kept moving. The name kept moving. The story keeps moving. Somewhere across the river right now, a child is asleep who does not yet know how to grieve, and a grandmother is awake who does. That is where this story ends tonight. Not at the intersection, not at the jail, not in the headlines. In a quiet room, in the dark, in the unbearable forward motion of a life that did not ask to keep going without her. Next time, I am going to tell you about a name you have never heard, in a city you may know, whose story ended in a place you would not expect. Stay close. Stay kind. I will see you there.